Wassim, how surprised were you by this announcement of possible peace talks with Al-Qaeda?
Well, actually, we're not surprised because it's a kind of officialization of what's already going on. If you remember, the former Malian president said here at France 24 that they had open negotiations with the jihadis. What's new about this? It's like, as you said, it's the highest Islamic corps in the country that is in charge, and the person of its president, the Imam Sharif Usman Madani Aydara. So we have a person who's in charge today, and we can imagine that this is when this is brought up to the national level. We're not talking about like peace talks or ceasefire in some areas. We are talking about something more national today and more formal. So this is why it's much more important than what was undertaken before by former governments or former figures of the Malian state.
What do you think will come out of these talks? Are we really expecting a peace agreement with Al-Qaeda?
Well, actually, it's hard to say now if it will go through or till a peace agreement or just a truce in some areas. But we have some example. For example, in the Nyono area, we know that a person in charge in the same Islamic Corps, and this time it's Mufa Haidara, he was in charge of making the deals in Nyono province, and it was local deals, and the jihadis got what they wanted, and in exchange, they let, for example, villagers go in between villages and go to markets and sell their goods. And what was dealt upon at that time, it was that women has to be veiled. It was that the jihadis can collect what they call zakat, but at the same time, the militants who were anti-jihadi were allowed to keep their weapons in order to protect those villages. But we know that those agreements weren't always respected, because in the same area the jihadis attacked farmers not later than 2 days ago. So today the jihadis are putting maximum pressure, and the Malian government is forced today to go through this because they are going further south. They are going to the area of Kayes. They are committing attacks on very vital roads in Mali, roads that go through Senegal, through Ivory Coast. And so they are negotiating from a position where they are in force. But at the same time, if the Malian government doesn't accept to negotiate, it'll be in very particular situation. Many reports were written about this by crisis group, for example, calling for negotiation. Myself, I wrote a report for the Sufan group saying that negotiations should be used as a leverage which go in parallel with military power, and that's what France doesn't want.
So France really against these negotiations, aren't they? Talk to us a bit about why that is.
France is against it because it is not logical for France to have on-foot soldiers on the ground fighting against those same jihadist groups. For example, France just killed a head of a unit, of Al-Qaeda unit, a few days ago in the Gourma. The military operations are ongoing hand in hand with the Malian army and with the army of Niger, and they cannot accept that at the same time the government of Mali is negotiating with those jihadis. But on the other hand, France is leaving northern Mali, so Tombouctou and, for example, Kidal and Tessalit, and the jihadis rule almost those areas. And France, by not accepting to allow the Malian government to do so, is putting the Malians in a very difficult situation, because today we have an equation where Al-Qaeda is accepting to negotiate, but at the same time, because France is stuck in this war against terrorism, France doesn't want to negotiate. So it's a very particular situation, but that can only be solved by Malians themselves. And as reminded by Malian politicians, and lately, this call to negotiate with jihadis comes from the national dialogue, inclusive national dialogue of 2019. So it's a popular demand to negotiate. But as you said, we cannot know yet what would be the outcome, knowing that the jihadis are negotiating from a position where they are putting the rules.
All right, really interesting. Thanks for your analysis. Wassim Nasr for us there on the programme.